We're going to be exploring this notion tonight, entitling the talk Freedom from Concepts. And so we'll see how that plays out. We're going to see how the experience that we're having right now as a human being at this level of consciousness is a temporary thing. We are in a state of evolving, constantly evolving. And if you've noticed this, even over the past few years, if you've been on a spiritual path, a lot of change, a lot of opening up, a lot of letting go, a lot of redefinition, reorientation goes on in the psychology, yes? And we've been doing this our whole life. We go through these stages of development from when we're little babies and haven't stopped. And so human consciousness is always in transition. It's taking some of its past and reintegrating it and reorientating it to a new developmental level. And so it's transcend and include. And we keep doing this through stages of development. And so we recognize that there must be a telos or an end point, right? Because this is just the way organic life works. You have a seed and that seed grows into something. So you have an acorn and it becomes an oak tree. You have a little sperm and it gets with the egg and you have a human being. Well, we are embodiments or vessels for the Imago Dei, the image of God, the divine spark, the Atman, the Buddha nature, or Tathagata Garbha, whatever language and symbol you want to give to it. There is this potentiality for enlightenment. And that also has a destination or an end point. And that is the flowering of consciousness into our natural state, which is beyond time and space. It's beyond name and form. But we have to develop it. We have to, in a sense, prepare for it. And through these stages of development, that's what we're doing. And so the universe has been referred to often as a schoolroom, right? A university. And this developmental process takes place all the time, even when we're sleeping. And so this is the teaching and learning experience, and it's always navigated by our choice making. What we want to learn, we're teaching ourselves. And so once we become present to this divine spark, this image of God within, this divine potentiality, our choice making becomes more and more one-pointed and directed towards this inner awakening. Right? And so we're going to be talking about this tonight. We're going to use this notion of how the mind goes through these levels of development. And I think a really good model that's been used is the 7 centers of the chakra system. And so if you know white light can be referred to as this absolute state, right? It's this light of spirit. But when you take this light of spirit and you put it through the prism, and we'll say the prism is the mind or consciousness, it breaks that one ray of absolute light into 7 rays. And those 7 rays are 7 frequencies. And each frequency has a different way of orienting towards the light, right? And so the 7 centers of the chakra system, you have the red shift at the very base of your spine. You have the yellow at the sacral center. You have the orange at the solar plexus. You have the green at the heart. You have the deep blue at the throat. You have the indigo at the third eye, and back to the absolute level at the 7th stage. And so what we're really doing is we're allowing all of these levels to open up. So we're going to be using A Course in Miracles primarily tonight to map this. If you're familiar with A Course in Miracles, you'll know that it's a non-dual teaching. In other words, you are the kingdom of God. He says, when I say he, it's the voice of the Course or Jesus. He'll say, it's been said of old that the kingdom of heaven is within you. And the ego mind is trying to think, okay, so something out there is within me. And he says, it's better to think of it as the kingdom of heaven is you. That there is no two-ness with your consciousness or your awareness and the kingdom of God. They're one being. And so we don't know that yet. And we have to go through this reawakening and reorienting so that we can become comfortable with that state of grace, which is our natural habitat. It's who we are. And so we go through these stages of development, as we're saying. And what the Course is going to point out is that the body really just serves as a framework for developing these potentialities. And it's interesting if you study the Course at all, Jesus is again speaking in the first person, and he says in the Course that there's really no difference between you and I. He's speaking to us in general. He says the only difference is in time, and that really doesn't exist. He says, but what makes this difference appear the way it is right now is I have actualized all of my potential, and there is no difference between me and God. I am truly in a holy state. He says, but that's still a potential or a seed within you. And so by choosing to wake up, you begin to navigate through this schoolroom of divine awakening. And what's amazing about your consciousness is it is the within and the without. It is the above and the below. So when you begin to employ choice and intention and effort, you literally change the hologram of your experience because it's all happening simultaneously and interdimensionally. So as soon as you want to wake up, the whole hologram of the universe begins to conspire to trigger your awakening according to your will. Let it be done unto you. So this is the important part, that you're empowered every moment to choose this for yourself, and there's nothing in heaven or earth that can deter you or separate you from the love of God. Your will is either going to bring it closer or further away from you, and it's always moment by moment your choice. Okay, so really important to get, you're doing it all by your choice making, and you already have what you're looking for, it's within. So as we go through this development, we start with the first level, which is at the base of the spinal column, and that's like the sensory motor, physical, embodied feeling that we have in consciousness. And then as we go to the next level, there's this more fluid, emotional, interpersonal connection that we have. And then there's this agency or egoic consciousness at the solar plexus, this sense of I am, but it's an I am associated with the body. And so these first three levels, the base, the sacral center, and the solar plexus, is where most, if not all of humanity will usually hang out. We stay here. Because what has to happen if we want to go higher and develop more is that we have to die to the I am the body identity. We shed that. We go through a developmental process, just like we did when we were little babies, and then when we were toddlers, and then when we were 10 and 17 and 21 and 31. We shed these identities, but up until now we've been doing it as the body. These hidden potentialities that we're talking about developing can take us beyond identification with the body. And that's what opens up the Sacred Heart. The Sacred Heart is where you begin to shift your platform of consciousness from I am the body to now I know I am the spirit. It's the first step in initiation, true initiation. It's like you hatch. Like that divine potential begins to really open up. And you begin to actually feel there is more now. You might not figure it out, it's still foggy, but you could taste it. It might sound or feel or seem so far away, but you can sense it. Somehow there's something in you that just knows. And so you begin to have these greater and greater experiences of feeling this inner depth to yourself. You're no longer just identified as your personality, and that's why oftentimes this can be a little difficult of an adjustment, because you're having to now balance out your family dynamics, your work. Like this can be a real difficult experience if you've gone through this at all, because you're shedding this fundamental concept of yourself, this symbol that you have identified as your whole life, just, morphing but staying pretty consistently the same, has now dropped away. And something else is taking its place, but it hasn't really stabilized yet. So it feels like when you're making that shift from ego to spirit and opening up that universal heart, that you really are uncertain and you're not sure how to think of yourself and what's going on. And oftentimes religions don't make sense. Because for the most part, not totally, but a lot of the religious belief systems that we have on this planet are catering towards those lower three levels. This is where human beings normally hang out. So a religious teaching will have affinity with the body identity, the personality, membership society, groupism, right? Morals, social gospel, right? This inner transformation oftentimes is a rarity. And that's why you'll find you'll start to gravitate maybe towards more esoteric Christianity or yoga or Buddhism or Sufism, because they have been mapping these higher states of consciousness, but it has been out of the public domain for the most part. You have to go find it. It takes effort. But what really becomes, I think, the most important aspect to this transitioning phase of the journey is learning how to meditate. And not, getting too far into visualizing and stuff like that, but actually just calming down, right? Settling down, becoming more and more attuned to this witnessing consciousness. That all along, this witnessing consciousness has been the golden thread. It was there when you were an infant. It was there when you were looking in the mirror at 3. It was there at 12. It was there at 21. On and on and on. You're looking back at something that is this true witness. That is a constant that will never change. It is the Imago Dei. It is the divine spark. It is the Atman. That's you. Everything else is going to change. You're going to transition and develop and transcend and include and on and on and on, back up to the white light. But what's really amazing is when you finally get home and you kick back and you're near in the absolute, you're going to be like, of course, this is who I've always been. Along the way, it's going to feel fantastic and fearful and terrifying, et cetera, but when you can meditate with skill, let's say, and you always come back to the stabilizing presence of your own witnessing consciousness, it doesn't matter what's going on, inside or outside. You rest in God. Be still. This is foundational, because it is going to be a rocky road as you move back up the spectrum, because you're going to always find that you'll go through a shift. It'll feel really crazy sometimes, not knowing how you're going to stabilize. You'll then stabilize. You'll then process and integrate all of the food at that level. You'll metabolize it. You'll stabilize. Now I know. And then the ground falls out. And then you're back in this other transitional phase, and you will keep going up the spiral of the spectrum, stabilizing, and then going through the dark night and losing identity because you're going to a higher rung in the spiral. The constant is the witness. So you never lose sight of that anchoring presence within you. This is the I am that Jesus spoke from. It's the I am that Krishna spoke from. It is the I am that Buddha spoke from. This is the I am that's listening right now. It's right with you. It is you. There's no two-ness. And really, what is eternal doesn't have to be developed, doesn't have to be actualized. It only needs to be accepted. But the acceptance comes when we're ready. And we say we're ready when we have learned to let go of all that we're not. And that's the development, right? So it's kind of a crazy thing when you think about it. You're evolving back to who you really are, right? So it's paradoxical. And so we'll get into it. Let's just stabilize and anchor into the witnessing. So just simply empty your lungs, completely exhale, squeeze out all the stale air, and then take a very long, deep inhale and hold it at the top. And out through the mouth with a sigh. Again, take the breath all the way to the bottom. Squeeze it out. Slow inhale. Hold it at the top. Again. Just keep letting go and relaxing. Deep, slow breathing. Begin to really feel into this witnessing state. And remember, the witness cannot be witnessed. It is the seer and not the seen. And so you can witness bodily sensations. Just feeling the tingles in your toes and up your legs, and feeling the seat pressing against your backside. You're feeling the shoulders relaxing. You're aware of the spine becoming nice and straight and your neck aligning. And as you're breathing deep and slow, you may be feeling a bit more relaxed and at ease, feeling calm, and you're aware of that calm feeling. And allow that calm feeling to permeate through your entire body. So as you breathe in, you're aware of your whole body. And as you breathe out, you calm your whole body. You feel your brow relax, your forehead goes smooth, taking all of the tension out of your eyes and eye sockets and feeling that energy melting into the back of your brain. All the eye energy just melts towards the back of the brain. Soften. And as the brain waves calm, you can really feel this deeper sense of witnessing, this greater clarity of insight, where you can now watch your emotions, knowing you're not your emotions, watching your thoughts come and go like clouds in the sky, feeling detached from these thought clouds, whatever they are, good or bad or neutral. The witness is like the empty sky. The witness is also the choice maker. And here we collectively choose to attune to the energy, the presence of the divine, the Christ, of the Buddha nature. We feel the frequency of the Holy Spirit. And if you're doing this with any sense of experience, you are being taken from ego identity into the spirit identity by means of this guide, this savior or teacher or guru. And for a moment, a sense of gratitude, feeling sacred space within and without. Gratitude for all the master teachers on the inner plane. And gratitude for the teaching, these divine ideas that are meant to actualize and light us up. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So we're going to be working with an important distinction here. The Course refers to perception and knowledge. Perception is that spectrum that we talked about before. It's the mind and the levels of the mind. And we are going through the experience of perception as human beings. This is all happening in perception. And what the Course is teaching us is that as the choice maker, you have two thought systems that you can choose between to navigate the universe of perception. One's going to take you up, you might say, back to the absolute light, where you and the Father are one. And the other thought system, or voice for perception, will take you down, where you will stay identified in density as the physical body, caught within the cycle of samsara, endlessly repeating cycles of rebirth. Okay, not knowing yourself, identified in and as illusion. All right, so those two voices are your two choices. And so perception, when you make the right choice, right perception, it takes you up the spectrum, and then it leaves you in this state of readiness to go back into grace. And that's the evolution. Your choice making and listening to the guide in whatever form that guide shows up in your dream. And perception is the dream, right? So we have to learn and develop and grow in the dream of perception so that we can come back to knowing all of this was really not existing as we thought it was. We wake up from the dream, but while we're dreaming, it's the only reality we know, and there are choices that we have to make. And that's why he'll say this: human beings can learn to improve their behavior and can also learn to become better and better learners. This increase serves to bring them into closer and closer accord with the sonship. Now, the sonship is really all of the awakened or enlightened beings, right? All the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, all the saviors and the saints, all the avatars, all the truly awakened beings, right? That's what he's calling the sonship. And they are at that superconscious state. And when we begin to attune to our true self, we join in knowing ourself as part of that sonship. And that's what we're learning, right? So he says the sonship itself is a perfect creation. And perfection is not a matter of degree. Only while there are different degrees is learning meaningful. So we're seeing the distinction here between knowledge, which is absolute being, your true self, what we're growing into, you might say, or growing to accept, and the absolute being of the sonship, which is not a matter of degree, it's already what it is. He says the evolution of humankind is merely a process by which you proceed from one degree to the next. You correct your previous missteps by stepping forward. This represents a process which is actually incomprehensible in linear terms or temporal terms, right? Because you return as you go forward. So you're going back the way you came, but you're progressing. So it doesn't make sense in linear time.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So is it like a remembering?
It is a remembering, a recognition, a remembering. Yes. So he says, the atonement is the device by which you can free yourself from the past as you go ahead. That's to say that there is this presence of love that can be experienced that actually short circuits all the karmic processing. That you, once you are ready to accept it, you don't have to worry about getting caught in these endless karmic loops and staying in these ever-repeating cycles. Once you can accept the divine presence back into your life, it's like you get put on a different track. Remember we said this universal hologram will begin to change and conspire with you. As soon as you allow this higher light to come back into your mind, you will feel like you're being lifted out of all of these lower density levels, and you're being put within a state where you know now you're only progressing towards God. You know, in the epistle to the Ephesians, it's stated beautifully that we've been taken out of the darkness and we've been established in heavenly dimensions. And all of the spiritual gifts now are ours to realize and claim for ourselves. And this is that process where we no longer feel like we're being in this danger zone all the time. We've been saved. We've been born again. We've been released from these lower fear-based realities. That's what the love of God does in the mind. When the mind's ready to accept that love back into its awareness, it changes course fundamentally or foundationally. He says, in this sense, the atonement will save you time. But as long as there is need for this atonement, there is need for time. But the atonement as a completed plan does have a unique relationship to time. Until the atonement is finished, its various phases will proceed in time. But the whole atonement stands at its end. At this point, at the end of time, the bridge of return has been built. So let's say it this way. The atonement is that seed that we talked about before, that you have within you the potentiality for infinite love. And that love, when you do actualize that potential, Jesus in the Course will say, you will then learn what the atonement is teaching you. And this is what it's teaching you. The separation never happened, and the ego doesn't exist. That's what you will actualize. And you'll feel it, and you'll know it not just as this little self, because that would be the ego. No, the ego doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in here. It doesn't exist out there. You'll realize that all of your brothers are also free, and they are also part of the sonship. They are the absolute light. They are one with supreme reality. That's who every living thing is. So when you actualize this atonement, you become the atonement in time. And then your body literally becomes a communication channel that radiates this knowledge. In the East, you can be called a guru or a Buddha or an avatar, or in the West, you could be called a Christ or a saint. These names don't matter when you realize the ego doesn't exist and the separation never happened. Names and concepts become clumsy and, need be so, but aren't you, never were you, and they're not your brothers. Your brothers aren't concepts. Your brothers aren't symbols. This is when you come to realize there's only love. But it's a love that's so limitless and pure and infinite that there's no one that isn't this love. That's the atonement. That's what we're here to learn. That's what we're going to actualize. That's what evolution is going to give us, if we could say it that way. So this is why he's saying perception is temporary. So he says correcting perception is necessary for us now because we don't know that we're this infinite love. So we have to go through this training. We have to, through these meditations and right choices, hatch, actualize it, manifest it. He says, but you may ask, how is this possible? As long as you appear to be living in this world. He's got an answer for that question. He says, this is a sensible question and it has a sensible answer, but you must be careful that you really understand the question. What is the you that is living in this world. You may have trouble with this, but if you will try not to close your mind, you may decide that we are not engaging in denial after all. So what he's basically saying is turn that question upon itself. Look at the you that you're thinking is you living in this world. And what you'll find when you meditate, and this is very much what Zen is after, when you meditate and you're discarding all the concepts that the mind can foment and conjure, you'll get down to the root, the concept of all concepts, the mother of all illusions, and it's this self concept. And when you really look at that, you'll realize I'm witnessing this. If I'm witnessing it, it's an object in my awareness. It's a concept, it's a symbol. It's not the one witnessing. I am the witness. So he's saying, look at the you that you think is living in this world, and you realize that's not you. That's the atonement. There's no separate you, right? And this is what we said earlier, the transition from the third chakra to the fourth chakra, from the particular to the universal, from the localized to the non-local, from body identity to knowing yourself as consciousness. That's the transition. And there's a death involved, and there's destabilization and disorientation, and family dynamics get upset, and everything we talked about earlier. Here we are again. It must needs be so, because you're not you as the body. This is the good news. Right? You hear the gospel being referred to as the good news. The good news is you're not the you that you think is living in this world. That is a concept. It's a mesmeric, hypnotic concept. And we've been robotically, unconsciously just following along with this belief that this is who I am. It's been running the show. It runs our life. It seems to be our life. It's the story of me. And it's all a concept. So he says, you've got to question that. So, again, Jesus speaking in the first person says this, you have dreamed of a separated ego, and you have believed in a world which rests upon it. This is very real to you. You cannot undo this by doing nothing and not changing. If you are willing to renounce the role of guardian of your thought system and open it to me, I will correct it very gently and lead you home. Now remember, this is the I am speaking, so don't think Jesus is another ego. This is the enlightened teacher. Whatever symbol resonates with you, it's Jesus or it's someone else. It doesn't matter. The ego isn't the ego of the teacher. It's the light. It's the presence of the divine. And basically what he's saying is, if you find yourself living in this world as this separate self down here, reach up to me, and I'll reach down to you, and I'll pull you up. That's the role of the teacher. The teacher's reaching down, the chela or the disciple is reaching up, and you get pulled up. And what the teacher wants to do is make you like him or herself. You share that essence. You are that being. You are the kingdom. But you have to open your thought system. And you begin to open it by questioning it. If I'm not the you that if I'm not the me that I thought is living in this world, then who am I? This is, when I was doing deep Zen training, that was the teaching that the Roshi gave me. Just the koan was, who am I? Who am I? And you sit and you realize everything that you're going to throw at that question as a response, as an answer, isn't you. Nothing that you can think, feel, taste, smell, touch, imagine is answering that question. You run out of stuff to say in your own head as to who you are. That's when your mind can actually finally, exhausted, open. Once your mind opens, you then begin to have a different experience with the master or the teacher. He begins to lead you home out of embodied identity. So he says then, questioning delusions is the first step in undoing them. And it might sound like an insult, but our current self-concept, thinking that I live in this world as this body, when you're actually infinite, eternal, divine love, is a delusion. To think you're the body identity is a delusion. So the first step in undoing that is you question it. Who am I? Who am I really? Who's the one listening? Right? And even if we've been around the block a few times with these teachings and this is old hat and we've heard all of this before, let this be a new instant. Snap out of the monotony of knowing it already and be present with the rawness and the newness of this instant. Who is the one listening? And he says, when you find out, when you turn your attention fully onto the I am that's listening, the witness that is watching, you realize you were never in this world and you were never the body. You can't be a body. You're infinite. You're divine. You're timeless. You're unborn. It's the answer to all your problems. In case you haven't made that connection yet. The other voice that pulls you down into density and wants to keep you in endlessly repeating cycles of rebirth and ego identity, it's going to say you can find the answer to your problems in things and objects and experiences and, traveling the worlds. But I think we've been doing that for a little while. That's why we had said, like, when you're ready to cross the threshold and initiate, you're done. You're done with the dream. You kind of know now what the dream's about. You need real medicine. You know where the problem is. The way in is questioning and knowing that any answer to who I am doesn't exist. The mind doesn't provide the answer. It's an experience. It's freedom from concepts. And that can happen at any moment when you're willing to drop all that you aren't and turn your thought system over to him. And that universal hologram will take you home. He says the questioning mind perceives itself in time and therefore looks for future answers. The unquestioning mind is closed merely because it believes that the future and the present will be the same. This is the ego's trick, right? You came in as the separate self. You're going to be here. You might think good ideas, be inspired. Oh, I never thought of it that way. And then you get up as the separate self and you go out. Again, the story of me doesn't really change. I got interesting insights, but I didn't really question anything. Because if I really questioned, I would go to the very root of the one who's asking the question, who am I? So the unquestioning mind stays closed and creates this continuity from the past to the future. The only moment that you can be awake or enlightened is this instant. That means the story of me has to be interrupted. And you don't know what this interruption will bring, right? Because that's the other thing. The story of me will then try to come up with some kind of an idea of what you need and what God is. You don't know. It's the I don't know mind. It's beautiful. It's open, unsealed. It doesn't know anything. It's totally ready to hear and learn and receive. The future doesn't exist. There's only this, and I'm surrendering. And I trust that the teacher will show up in some way, shape, or form that I can accept for myself. He says even an atheist can be a teacher of God. It doesn't require some religious belief system. It requires an open mind and a willingness to receive in the present moment. Nothing else. No concepts. And really what you're opening to is yourself. Yourself is infinite love and the answer to all your problems. Put another way, you are the answer to all your problems. So he says when you're in this uncurious, unquestioning mind, it establishes this arrested development and you stay stuck, rigid, closed off. This is usually an attempt to counteract the underlying fear that the future will be worse than the present. And this fear inhibits the tendency to open the mind and question at all. So a lot of us come to these teachings traumatized, upset, really wounded. And so sometimes it'll take us a little while, I know it did me, to feel okay enough to open, to soften, to yield, right? Not to try to control, because when we're really afraid, we're hanging on to the me really tight, trying to protect it. And really, if you think about what we've been saying, we're trying to protect it from love. Love is scary. So the more we can relax and open, he says, then we will begin to realize that the future is not going to be worse than the present. The future is going to be more and more miraculous. Right? But these are only words and concepts, and you must make the choice to trigger the experience. It's all resting on you. These are just energy-filled invitations. You must choose. You must say yes. And it's always now. Forget the past for an instant. Don't plan on the future. It doesn't really exist. And open yourself to love in this present moment. And you don't know what it is. You just know it's everything you want. You know it's your divine state, your divine self. There's something in you, because we wouldn't be hearing this if we haven't already somehow crossed that threshold. There's something already aware in you that knows this is what you want. And then he says, when you begin to do this consistently, your inner vision will open. Right? This is part of that developmental process. You go from relying on physical sight to awakening. In Buddhism, it's called the Buddha eye, or the eye of wisdom, the eye of Shiva, the spiritual eye that fills your body with light. Like, this is the archetype of divine vision. And you awaken that in you. You realize that was a potentiality that you had. And he says visions will become natural. You'll begin to experience this deepening of life, and you'll realize there's a hidden side to nature. And visions are the natural perception of the spiritual eye. But this is important. He says there's still corrections. So don't get lost in visions. You might have amazing visions, world-shattering visions. But don't get lost in the appearances, right? He says the spiritual eye is symbolic and therefore not a device for true knowing. It takes you higher and higher up the spectrum of perception, and you'll correct your consciousness as you go along, opening that inner vision more and more. It's going to be spectacular, vast and beautiful, beyond what you can think and imagine as a human mind. And you'll see and know the vastness of this universe of mind. But this is all correction. It's all part of your healing. So he says, true knowing takes you beyond what the spiritual eye can show you. He says the term insight, though referring to lofty perception, is not an attribute of gnosis or knowledge, knowing yourself as the infinite love. This is why terms like lofty are meaningless in this context. Insight is not the way to knowledge, but it is a prerequisite for knowledge. You have to cultivate these abilities and potentials. You have to keep opening to the infinite. These deeper and deeper layers of yourself will hatch. Right? You'll have deeper abilities, deeper knowing, intuition, insight. It'll just keep magnifying in ways that you can't foresee at the moment. But, he says, that is all just a prerequisite. Being of God, knowledge has nothing to do with perceptions at all. So once you're done learning in the classroom of perception, you graduate. You're done with school. All of this was school, going up the spectrum, developing your abilities, actualizing your potential, opening your spiritual eye, realizing that you're the higher self. All part of the curriculum. But you're going to graduate. And when you graduate, you leave the dream behind. And that dream will take you to heights unimaginable. But eventually you'll realize even this is tiny in comparison to who I am. Let's just see here. Oh boy, last one. So he says this. He says the path, right, up the spiral becomes quite different as you go along. Nor could all the magnificence, the grandeur of the scene, and the enormous opening vistas that rise to meet you as you travel on be foretold from the outset. You can't imagine. Yet, right? Don't get lost in the illusion. Even as magnificent and vast and beautiful that the illusion can appear. Don't get lost. Yet, even these, whose splendor reaches indescribable heights as you proceed, fall short indeed of all that finally awaits you when the pathway ceases and time ends. But somewhere you got to begin. Right? So this is, again, something that they say in Zen. When you're meditating and you're actualizing and opening these hidden potentials, you're going to see hellish things and celestial things. Don't get lost in the Makyo. Don't get lost in the illusion. You stay in the center of the mandala of your consciousness. Don't go out from the center. Stay as the witness. You'll learn, you'll develop, you'll understand, but all in all, you're coming back to where you never left, and it's the one listening right now. Right? So just take a moment and digest. And as you bring your hands to heart, sensing the foundation of consciousness as this witness, and knowing that you are the witness in all minds. There is only one witness here, one dreamer of the dream, one true being. And this being honors itself in its various forms. Namaste, my friends. Blue bag is going to go around. If you have other thoughts, questions, you feel free. We bless the offering and we charge it with the intention that it may bring light and true happiness to all beings in whatever form it takes. And so it is. Amen. Thank you. All right, let's seal the deal. Rise. Again, brand new instant, no past, no future, as we rest in God, knowing that the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. Amen. Have a beautiful night, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Course in Miracles, Monday night, 7:15.